Yeah, so Sri Lanka has been a great destination in Asia for travel and tourism. It's been a hub for most of East Asia and also Europe, and predominantly over even though there was a civil war going on, Sri Lanka was still quite a popular destination. Having said that, we've also been there's been a lot of connectivity. So in terms of airlines, cruise ships, even being a shipping famous, quite a popular shipping terminal as well. That has always given us an edge in terms of location. So, and having said that, we are also an island filled with a lot of different aspects, from beach, mountains, and you can be on the coast to the central province, which is in the 7,000 feet above sea level within like 3 to 4 hours, or if you're flying, you can be there in half an hour. So we have quite a vast array of things to offer, from history to architecture to even the people who are quite welcoming. So this has made me, over the years, go from having worked for other brands to starting my own brand over the last 5 years and starting to create this, and also having launched the Serendipity Collection over the last year, regardless of a pandemic that we are going through, adapting to certain criteria of what the customer wants and then implementing it over the last few months.
If you look before the pandemic, right, in 2019, Sri Lanka was ranked the best tourist destination, right? And even today in the morning, you sent that article from Condé Nast Travel, and Sri Lanka was the second best destination to travel post-pandemic, right? And internally, we've seen many guests coming in as well, right? Because when we take the international market, most of them come in because of what Sri Lanka has to offer, like in terms of, like Mario said, the history, the architecture, but also the experiences that we have. And also what we've noticed is most establishments, they focus only on the beach, the coastal areas, right? But we also have a lot of activities and experiences for guests inland. Like for example, in Dambulla, now we have a villa in Dambulla, which is doing quite well, right? We have seeing area, and then there's the Dambulla cave temples, right? Then there's wildlife safaris, and then again the hill country like Norelia, destinations like that, Ella, we have the Nine Arches bridges, right? And even areas like, for example, Jaffna, right? Trinco again, beach. But when you take Jaffna, there are a lot of tourists who want to see what all the buildings now left over from the war, and that's a market opportunity there as well. But so that's what we want to focus on. We want to focus on Sri Lanka as a whole, and not just what everyone else is doing. That's why that's what sets our brand apart from the others. That's what I feel.
And one more thing to add to that is that Sri Lanka is very importantly, it's a year-round destination. Earlier, Sri Lanka was known to capture most of the European markets from November to April, but now there's travel year-round because we don't see much of the monsoon season due to global warming, and also because we have the East Coast tourism happening from May to say September in Arugambe, Trincomalee, Pasikuda. So we are basically trying to focus all our villas around Sri Lanka, offering guests to be able to travel anytime during the year, not just during a specific time, where of course rates are also quite high in Sri Lanka because hotels increase their prices during December and January just to reap enough money to survive the rest of the year. But we want to sort of change that dilemma and mindset as well. Okay, so this is very interesting because this is something that I always try to convey to a lot of people. What is luxury to an individual? It's not that we're focusing on luxury in general. Luxury is not a luxury brand. It's not a high street brand or a luxury brand. It's not something that people perceive to be a materialistic thing. Here we are looking at something. A luxury could be different to any individual. It could be the luxury of space. A person seated in a small apartment in London, working from 9 to 5, 6 days a week, could also work from Sri Lanka, which is why Sri Lanka came up with the digital nomads concept over the last year. Because when you're home working and you're stuck in an apartment, or even if you're going into the office, you still like a change in environment. So what Sri Lanka has to offer, or what inspired me to start this brand, is that okay, you can work from a villa, which is also like a home, for probably half the cost or somewhat the same cost, and that is the luxury that would be important to that individual. Like basically the luxury of space, the luxury of being able to walk around your house, the luxury of being able to wake up to nature, a beautiful view, and so on, or even a tropical climate, right? And again, there are other aspects to luxury as well. Like it could be even a simple luxury of being able to work when you want to work. This is only in terms of work. So when we look at our villa collection, our theme is basically around history and architecture. Now, history, there's a lot of history. Sri Lanka is rich in history. It's whether it's the Portuguese, the British, the Dutch, traditional, the Sri Lankans who've been here. There's a lot of different traditions that have either remained, or there's a hybrid of traditions, and that is very interesting, especially when you travel around the island. Nothing stays the same. So that's the same with the architecture and the properties and the buildings around Sri Lanka as well. So if you take the south, it could be more open, more Portuguese. If you take the central province, it's more British influence. If you take Colombo and the fort area, again, that's more British influence. So what we'd like to portray in our villa collection is that people are not coming to stay at a room which is perfect, which is like perfect linen, a television, and your Bluetooth radio and things like that, or a mini bar. This is not what we're focusing on. What we're focusing on is basically the luxury of being able to experience how, because most of our villas are also owned by high profile people who use them as holiday homes. So we want the guests to experience how the owner would like to stay in their villa during their own holiday. So it's not an experience which is standardized throughout, like one of the international brands. It's basically tailored and custom according to each villa, bringing the aesthetics out of each culture and each owner's profile as well. So in a nutshell, that's basically what we wanted to enhance from the brand that we're creating, based on history and architecture. And architecture is also key because it just happens that we have quite a lot of international architects who have been, who have curated a lot of projects in Sri Lanka, but we also have a lot of talented, have had and still do have a lot of talented architects who've been there, such as, Jeffrey Bawa. We currently have loads of other architects like we have Channa Daswatta or Philip Viratna. There are quite a few big names out there that who are also commissioned for international projects. So this is a mixture of the architecture they've learned throughout the years, which they have brought out into the properties that we have curated under our collection and have been customized to the owner's preference in terms of a holiday home, regardless of the location.
If I would add something to that, so like Mario said, our villas, like the villas that we onboard to our brand, is basically a portrayal of the owner's personality, right? So for example, when guests come to that villa, they can experience the owner through the villa. Like for example, the architectural cues the owner has taken, right? So and especially when we approach a villa to onboard into our property, there's a lot of points that we consider. Like especially when it comes to Mario, he's very specific, right? He'll ask like, okay, what's the story behind this villa, right? What makes this special? And if we feel that we can actually sell an experience to our guests, that's when we onboard this property. So if you would go onto our website and look at our villas, there's like a descriptive page, like there's a description of each property based on the architect, right? Why the owners made it, what the owners feel about their holiday home, right? So it's So there's a big story that each villa has. It's not just, like he said, we're not just selling rooms to our guests, right? We're selling a full experience.
I mean, this is interesting and also very tough to capture in terms of marketing though. That's why Vishwa has a tough job, because we can't really, on a traditional hotel website, you can take different angles of the room, of the amenities, of the common areas and so on. But here it's very difficult to capture the experience or the essence of luxury that property has to offer. Now, say for example, if you take one of our properties called, let's take Red Cliffs, right? That's in Mirissa. It's a 15-acre property, and it's the last villa which was designed and the construction was overseen by Jeffrey Baba, and it's featured on quite a lot of publications as well. However, the property and the architecture is interesting. It's not like any of his other projects, but the most captivating thing is the view, because it has a 270-degree view overlooking the Valigama and the Mirissa Bay, which is very rare in Sri Lanka, and you can't really bring that out on a website or even verbally. So it's until the guest arrives there, this is a challenge we are having, but this is something we will overcome in time. It's that each villa has something special. And I'll give one last example, which is the Dambulla villa. So we have a villa in Dambulla which is right next to one of the larger hotel chains, which is on a 5-acre property. But when someone goes there, regardless of whether you believe in energy or God or whatever you believe in, you feel really grounded once you go there. So it's like what we are trying to promote there is now that people should, who visit there need to basically ground themselves or go through meditation, or we try to promote wellness there or wellness weekend packages, because it's something completely different to the other properties. So yeah, this is a good thing, interesting, but it's also a challenge for us to bring out in our marketing. Okay, so now most properties or most hospitality individuals or companies would say, okay, we have a specific target market. Here, I wouldn't segregate it into one market. So I wouldn't say we are high-end niche or we are low budget, right? Because the traveler demographics have changed now. Most people would have this common misconception that a backpacker doesn't have money. But that's not true, because a backpacker could be a millionaire in another country but just wanting to experience. They don't want to spend too much on their accommodation, but they want to spend more on their experience. And these individuals would have enough money to bring their families back to Sri Lanka at some point when they're married and have children, and spend 50 times more than what they spend initially. So this is something that most of us take for granted when we see certain segments of the market. So I wouldn't say we have a specific segment. In terms of market segmentation or countries we believe in, it all depends on how actually even Sri Lanka tourism destination markets us. Us as an individual villa company can't destination market. We are not that strong enough as a small brand. We may be unique, but to destination market a country is something very large. So like say for example, if Sri Lanka tourism destination markets us with Russia and East Europe because of the connectivity with Sri Lankan Airlines from Moscow, we see a huge inflow of tourism into Sri Lanka. If we do a huge campaign in England, we see huge, we have seen large flows of Europeans into Sri Lanka as well. And it all depends on the connectivity and the destination marketing. We've just got to understand the demographics and the statistics of how things are working in the market, and then fast utilize them to capture a piece of the pie that's coming in here. So, but having also said that, I'd like for people who have a interest in architecture, an interest in experiences, an interest in history, coming to view the properties so that they could understand. It's like viewing a piece of art in an art museum. It's not as so much as staying in a room and enjoying the ocean per se, right? It can be a mix of someone who's a collector of art being able to say, okay, now I've seen this property and now I've viewed this architect. So that's what we're trying to bring out in general with the market that we're trying to focus on. And maybe Vishwa can talk to you a bit more on how he targets his his target segment and the markets based on seasonality, based on social media demographics and things like that, right?
Yeah. So talking about how we differentiate our brand from our competitors is like we said before, what we focus on, right? History, architecture, and like I said, the owner's personality, which is portrayed through their villas, right? So if we take, now I'm not gonna name anyone, but if we take our competition, most of our competition, they, like I said, they onboard, like if you go on their websites, they have all kinds of villas, right? They have from high end to low end, and what they're really selling is, they're just selling you a villa, right? And the same villa would be renamed by other companies. Whereas villas that we have exclusive partnerships with our villas, and also we have exclusive strategic partnerships with companies like Sri Lanka, like the Favorite Group, Posh, right? And all of these add value to our guest experience. And like I mentioned before, when we onboard new properties, right, we don't just go and onboard any other villa, right, that would already be partnered with another company. Then we don't want that, because then for us that experience won't be unique, because another company can sell them the same villa, right? So to answer your question again, we believe that we are different and we are unique, and as of now we don't have much competition in terms of what we are offering, right? We don't have companies offering the same experience. That's what we focus on mainly. And if
yeah, so when we look at our product, what defines us from the rest is that, like Vishwa also touched upon, is that, you know, we are quite selective on the, like, it's like a membership of properties to be in, and this is what we want to start portraying. Now there are other competitors in the market who resell or sell villas, but the partners who work with us are exclusive with us, and they are starting to become like a small family. So the owners are, like I mentioned, high profile owners who'd like, some of them who'd like to be low key, some of them who'd like to be out there. But it's a nice synchronization of owners where the friendship and the relationship between everyone keeps growing, and we work, and it's working perfectly where it's based on referrals. And we also have interest from investors and others out of Sri Lanka wanting to take in, wanting to, you know, either lease properties and let us manage them, or investing in the company direct. But talking about that right now is a bit too premature, because we are still a young company, we are still growing, and I want things to be perfect before I can let any other investor into the company. Having said that, like Vishwa mentioned also, that we focus on a lot of strategic partnerships locally. So now Sri Lanka, as you know, is a great product. They're Sri Lankan grown. The family who are behind that product is also one of our main shareholder in the company. And they build boats, they started sailing, they have catamarans, sunset cruises, whale watching cruises, all with an international product. Now that's a huge risk for someone foreign to take in Sri Lanka, even though they've been in the country for over 30 years. They do build boats, they add to the economy, they export these products. So this is what we'd like to portray through the brand and bring as strategic partners, are brands like this. Now we have a few smaller people who I identified and earmarked during the pandemic, who were doing a lot of online food deliveries. Like I tied up with, let's say, this guy called who does crab tails. Now he's one of our exclusive partners, providing traditional crab curry with different spice levels to each villa if and when it's required or ordered. He's stemming from an area in Trincomalee, and the recipe is his traditional family recipe, which his mother now prepares, and I find that very unique. So someone coming from abroad wouldn't want to have, if you're coming from, I've got a dual citizenship in England, but I don't want to come back to Sri Lanka and have bacon and eggs for breakfast. I'd probably want to experience something else. I travel quite a lot, so if I go to China, I'd want to eat what they're having in that specific city. If I travel to Thailand, each city varies, the food varies, and so on. You don't have one exact dish. Even if you take Sri Lanka, it's very unique, because if you take the hill country, they use more coconut milk in their curries. If you take the south, they use less. Most of their curries are surprisingly with less coconut milk, right? Like if you take a fish curry, they don't use coconut milk at all in the south most of the time. So there are different variations. Even if you take a pol sambol or coconut sambol, there are huge variations to how you do it. Either you can make a fresh one, either you can temper it, either you can use moldy fish, you can make it with onions or without onions, you can use tomatoes or not use tomatoes. And this all depends on which part of the island you come from. And this is something we want the guests to experience. We don't want them to have the same pol sambol they have down in the south, up in the north in one of the villas there. It's all unique, it's all different, and this is what sets us apart. If you take competition, they'd standardize most of their experiences in the villas, or they'd resell based on different, pricing ranges and whatnot, but they're not focusing on enhancing how the locals would have it in that area of Sri Lanka, which is what we are trying to bring out as well, which is why, again, I said we're trying to use a lot of local produce, sustainable, reusable. So we are not, and we're trying to, most of our properties are also powered by solar. We are looking at a lot of reusable energy. We are looking at not using plastic. We're looking at carbon credits from some of our properties that have a lot of trees. So this is the kind of idea we want to go. We want to make it more of a lifestyle brand than just a luxury lifestyle brand, not just another villa collection brand.
Exactly.
So on the locations that we have, it's not fair for us to say that we don't have two villas in the same location. We do have multiple villas in the same location as well, and we have no problem with that because each villa is unique. So it all depends on the requirement of the guest and what they'd like, whether it's not just the basics of number of people and number of rooms. It's also whether they like beach, whether they like land, or maybe they want a cinnamon estate, or maybe they want to be away from the beach or right on the beach, maybe they want a cliff, so it's all different. So but our idea is to expand around the island because, like I said, regardless of even the food, Sri Lanka is so diverse that you would have a different experience in every single city or village or suburb or whatever you want to call it, but every single place is unique. Like if you take the cultural triangle, Dambulla is different to Sigiriya in many ways, and it's different to Polonnaruwa, it's different to Anuradhapura. They are all old kingdoms, but with very different things that set them apart. If you take the central province, Alla is very different to Norelia, Norelia is very different to Kandy. Kandy has mostly the Temple of Truth, but other than that, there are other things that you can experience in Kandy, like even again the architecture. You have beautiful hotels like the Queen's Hotel Kandy, or the Swiss Hotel Kandy, which are beautiful pieces of architecture that can be preserved in the future as well. So when we look at expanding, we will be looking at expansion into various areas of Sri Lanka that has some interest in terms of not just the property but activities as well. So if we take some of the areas in Sri Lanka, like say we expand into Kalpitiya. Kalpitiya is famous for dolphin watching, kite surfing, so on. If you take going up to Jaffna, like Vishver mentioned, there's a lot of history. So it's one of the few forts in Sri Lanka built by the Dutch, and that's which you have in Batiklo and, if I'm not wrong, in Mathura and in Galle. So there are 4 forts in Sri Lanka. There aren't many, more than 4, right? As far as my memory serves well, there are 4 forts in Sri Lanka. But each fort is also different. Each fort is also used for different purposes. So this is what we'd like to bring out now. It's very interesting because I was going through a few locations over the last few weeks. I visited a coconut estate. Now, even from something like a coconut estate, you can start a farm. You can have chickens, you can have cattle or poultry and whatnot. You can have families visiting and seeing how people live on a farm in Sri Lanka, how they harvest coconuts, how they use the vegetables from that area to sustain themselves. You don't actually need to go to a high street supermarket to make sure that you have your regular food. You can harvest sunlight. You can have it's always, I mean, other countries do it. Australia does it quite well. They do off-the-grid housing, which Vishver knows as well because he's been in Australia for a few years. That's becoming very popular in most other countries as well, to live off the grid. So, not going off track, but each destination in Sri Lanka has something different and unique to offer. If it's the south, again, experiences, we would say like there's cycling through paddy fields, learning how to cook Sri Lankan traditional food. Again, whale watching, dolphin watching, kite surfing. There are so many surf points, whether it's for a beginner or even for an expert. The food, the diverse food. Now there are people moving back, or there are foreigners moving to Sri Lanka and starting restaurants, which is not just changing the dynamics of Sri Lankan food, but it's also bringing international food into the spectrum, and it's creating a bit of fusion, which is very interesting from a foodie point of view, as I love food as well. And this is being touched in areas predominantly in the south, but also now spreading to the east coast. So it's interesting to see how things are changing, and I think that Sri Lanka is going to change quite a lot, and our villas are geared up to adapt to those experiences first. So we'd like to take our guests to the local market, get them to select their own vegetables, their fruits, come back and see it cooked, these rare vegetables that you don't even see in supermarkets abroad. We have so many types of different leaves, right? We have the gotukolo and kangkung and mukulan and all of that you don't find in other countries, and these have a lot of health benefits, which some properties in Sri Lanka, independent, like a property that I look up to is Santani Wellness, but they're quite good in bringing out the natural produce and then using that for people's wellness in terms of their food and lifestyle and so on. So this is something that we'd like to bring as well, not just from a wellness perspective, but from an experiential perspective.
It doesn't just benefit us as a company, or not just the guests. Yeah, it adds value to the guests' experience, but it also helps the local communities. I mean, when we take the guests, right, from our company, we take them and we show them, where we source the local produce from. We take them and they get to see the paddy fields, the way it's harvested, and that also motivates, for example, the Govia, right? I don't know.
The local communities.
Yeah, right. So that motivates them, right? Because when they see tourists coming, then they feel good about their job, right? And also that helps us make strong bonds with them. So the more business we get, the more money they make, right? Because we source our ingredients from them. So, for example, I'll be going off topic a bit, but what everyone wants to do is come to Colombo, right, to get a job. But when we, make the young people in these local communities, when they see tourists coming and purchasing from them, they are more likely to want to take over from their fathers or mothers, right, and continue that. So in the long run, when that happens, then Sri Lanka can be more self-sustaining as well, right? Then we wouldn't have to import from other countries, right? I mean, vegetables, rice, we can grow it all here. So there's a bigger picture here as well. So we, as a brand, we don't just focus on making profits, right? And not just on the guests. We want to help the local communities as well of the surrounding area where our villas are located. Yeah.
So this was actually, funnily enough, this was an idea that stemmed from, during lockdown, I'm sure there was a lot of enlightening moments to many people, right? To me, it was being lucky enough to be stuck in my house in Norelia, where we had enough land to walk around and so on. But for someone but prior to that, I was actually, when COVID hit, I was stuck in my apartment for 2 months prior to being able to get a pass and go to Norelia and be with my mom. And my father was stuck in a different country, so was my sister. For a whole year, we didn't see them. So these kind of experiences made me understand that it's not just the traditional, the mainstream hotel that would be comfortable for anyone to travel to. Because also, maybe most people are used to and feel safe at a 100-room hotel, which has the same rooms, which has more people, and so on. But then I saw a different segment of people who want to basically have their own privacy, safety, and so on, right? And this sort of sparked an idea between me and my other co-founder, who's also the investor, Conrad Pringes, who's also the CEO of Sri Lanka. We thought of using this knowledge that I had gained in tourism to bring out this idea of using some of the properties that were left empty maybe 75% of the time during the year, and talk to the owners and put them under our collection. So in terms of expansion, this stemmed from starting as an idea last year to then gaining a lot of momentum, being profitable in Q1, Q2, which is very rare for a startup. We've expanded, we've tripled the size of our team over the last month, which is also great. We are looking at further expansion until end of April-ish for the first round of basically expansion, until for a few months, because it's off season in Asia, and we wouldn't want to bite more than we could chew, let's put it that way, right? And but we'd like to ideally get to a certain number within Sri Lanka, get the process and the standing operating procedures right, get it perfect, get the marketing team in place, get the social media team in place, make sure that everything is flowing smoothly. Each territory, the sourcing, the customer experience, everything is not standardized, but the process is in place that is running smoothly. Once that is established in Sri Lanka, we'd like to look at expanding this brand into other areas. My experience, having consulted for most hotel chains in the region, is that I'd like to expand into new markets, like such as, my experience is working in Cambodia, Vietnam, Myanmar, Laos, certain parts of Thailand, not the traditional Bangkok or Pattaya and so on, but other areas within Thailand as well that can be exposed, right? There are lots of villas and individual homes, even in Indonesia, right? There are loads of islands with private islands, private homes. So this is the kind of ideology and thinking behind this brand, which is expanding with key partners into other countries, which are, let's say, emerging markets, which are not saturated, and which will be very interesting in terms of, again, history and architecture, but with a short-term plan of, I would say, the first year, now that we are nearly through it, is Sri Lanka, but by the second to third year, I'd like to start looking at expansion into other countries and exploring that model as well, since we've got the blueprint in place now.
No, I just wanted to say, you want to expand more within the country as well, right? But focusing on areas which not a lot of other brands are focusing on. Like, for example, everyone focuses on down south, right, the beaches and all. But we want to focus on areas like Jaffna, Mannar, Puttlam, because all of those areas have different experiences to offer, right?
Even Negombo, which no one focuses on, mostly. A lot of big hotels do, but if you search villas, there are very few unique villas. However, if you take Negombo, it's a lot of Italian influence, for example, because of the foreign employment. So these are things that we want to look into, unique selling points. Thank you very much to LMD and the team for having us on the show, and also for giving us the opportunity to talk about our brand, and it was a great experience. Thanks for having Vishver and I with you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.